Well, welcome back to Friday edition of MVP Real Estate Podcast. We have Kyle Stephenson here, and I apologize, I didn't catch where you're from.
I am originally from the center of the universe, which is New Jersey, but
Obviously,
right. I mean, you knew that, but now I am in Richmond, Virginia, and I've been here for like 30 years and absolutely love it.
awesome. We actually did a basement renovation for someone who moved from Virginia, and he had two condos being rented out there. And when he bought them, there must have been a huge spike that went on in Virginia in in pricing because he bought it on the low side, and when he sold it, he profited so much on just the appreciation of a condo. And then
Right.
obviously the cash flow was great out there. But I'm going to let you talk more about that because he was one of the guys that got out of the military, had some extra cash, bought a property, but not really a property investor for life. Like wasn't his passion. It was just cash flow.
Right.
So I got to talking to him and I was trying to pick his brain, but he was like, he had the property manager and he was kind of hands off with it. So I'm interested in the Virginia market and where that's gone and where it's going. So
Sounds
we'll
good.
make sure to touch on that.
Absolutely.
Um, but so for our viewers listening and tuning in, Kyle does long-term rentals. We talked a little bit before the show about the short-term market, and we were talking a little bit about that. We have a lot of questions because we're both not in that short-term rental market, but long-term rentals is where we'll stick today. You'll give us kind of a scope of that East Coast. So thank you for giving us the time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you have going on in Virginia. So thanks for
Absolutely.
being here.
Absolutely. So, give you a little bit of background about myself. I absolutely love the rental market, the long-term rental market, and I fell in love with it 30 years ago. The reason I like it is because it allows the average individual who doesn't have a tremendous amount of dough to accumulate long-term wealth, and you can do it safely. So, right when I got out of school, I was just absolutely mesmerized by the some of the big monster landlords of the time. And so the name I'm going to bring up is Donald Trump, whether you like him or don't like him.
Yep.
um in the 80s and 90s, like, he was just the man. Now, what I didn't realize is the guy started, his father, Fred Trump, kind of handed off $250 million to him to kind of get the ball rolling. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't have 250 million.
It would be
So
nice
it
if we
would
could start out with that. That would be
right,
great.
right. So what I tell everybody that gets ready to get in the business is, um if you start off with that, and even if you're worth like 4 billion, it's not really that impressive. Because you're really just in real estate, you can do much better than that if you start with a big bankroll.
Yeah.
So, I didn't start with that. I started by buying a duplex. Saying I was from New Jersey. I always talk about it, 142 Patterson Avenue, Patterson, New Jersey. I had
You'll
no idea.
always remember that
I
first
remember
one.
it. That's it,
You
right?
always do.
You do. And so, and I made every mistake in the world. I bought it for too much money. Um, and I ran into the wrong people. I did everything wrong, but I knew in the long term, right, that somebody paying down a note, I'd eventually learn how to get the right tenants. I'd learn about the maintenance. Um, so I, after a few more years, was able to scrounge together a little bit more money. So the first one, I was able to kind of get in with $3,000. And, I did it the way a lot of people say. I did it off of a credit card and had yeah. So I did it off of a credit card, and somebody held a second. And I mean, everything that you kind of, read about kind of the no money down thing. So that's how I got started. Um, a few years later, and I was a salesperson. So I was selling at the time, I was selling toilet paper for Scott Paper Company. And then got into a little bit of medical sales, and I ended up relocating to Richmond, Virginia, and was able to buy another property. And it took me like 5 years to get there. So this is kind of also talking about the magic of compounding interest. So 5 years later, or of just kind of, we'll get to that in a second. So I ended up being able to buy a triplex, and so after I bought the triplex, things were going a lot better because I learned everything from the duplex. So I bought the triplex, and then that went really well. And then instead of having to wait 5 years, I think I had to wait like maybe 1 or 2 years, and I bought a block of townhomes. I say a block of townhomes, or like 8 townhomes. And again, just kind of using cash, living a very, very frugal life. Okay. Never have I really overdone it. Matter of fact, a lot of people, yeah, they sound very frugal. So anyway, and then I was able to get into even a few more homes. And so, over the next few years, then I had some friends to say, hey, Kyle, you're doing okay with some of this stuff. How about if we invest some money with you? And I was really, really nervous about that because I didn't want to create a cash failure for someone else. And I just was very nervous. But long story short, we put together some money and we did some things called preferred return syndications. And that's a whole nother side of the business. And we ended up buying an apartment building, a 176 unit apartment building. And again, very fortunate that was going okay. At the same time, I was still selling medical equipment, but had made the decision. Actually, I needed like a coach to help me make the decision because I was always terrified of failure, and that my life would come to an end, and then I had gotten married, and so I had and then I just felt I had this added responsibility, and it really freaked me out. So this coach was like, look, you really love what you're doing. You need to like just, I can talk about it now, but I still get terrified of failure. But that's why it's so good to have really these types of forums to talk about. So we ended up buying so I finally got out of corporate America, and we started.
And how many years from your start to that?
Yeah. So you're going to be like, well, dude, this like took forever. But understand, I'm terrified of failure. So it took me, so it took me 15 years. All right. From my duplex.
That's security. That's like the little bit of security, and holding that W-2 isn't all bad if you can manage your time and your mental health well.
Right.
Because having that W-2 does allow you to get some lending options that, like myself, I can't get because I don't hold a W-2.
Right. Right.
So there are some pros and some minuses to it all.
You're right. You're right.
But in terms of failure, that is, I want to touch on that after you're done with your explanation. But I just wanted to know for our audience of the time span there. But all right, so 15 years later.
So 15 years later, now I'm kind of getting, I'm feeling more confident. All right. So we ended up, again, I have cash coming in. We're managing things well. And so lenders are starting to respect me. Okay. And just respect my thoughts and our operations. And so.
And that's gotta be a mental breath of fresh air for you.
Yeah, it probably was, I don't know. I never think of anything as a breath of fresh air because I have like some anxiety issues.
Are you that's nervous over there? I'm sensing maybe because I know
that's So I have anxiety issues, right? So that's a whole nother right? That would be like a podcast, right? That's like a whole different podcast with
Oh,
like,
for sure.
right? So anyway, um, so we ended up doing even another apartment community. It was 120 units. And again, I was able to syndicate that, but I always put my skin in the game. I always was putting money in. So that's the other part. There are people who are like, oh, well, everybody puts up money and I get equity, but I don't believe in that, because I want people to know I'm in it just like you. Like if I screw
Yeah.
this up, right, then I'm going down with you. Okay. So the other part that I will do is I will we're getting way too deep in this conversation, but I'll also guarantee the note. Like I'll say, look, and I'm in the position to do that now. Like, if somebody wants to invest with me, they don't have to sign on the note, but these are things that down the line you can do. So and again, it's just me saying, hey, listen, I'm going to put the weight on my back and I'm going to do this. So fast forward, now we're like managing, call it 500 units. It's something like that. And the crash happens in 2008. And like you couldn't borrow money for like a stick of gum. Like it was really bad. So
Please.
right. So and then but here's the deal, right? A lot of people couldn't pay their mortgages. So I'm a salesperson. I can't borrow any money, so I can't grow. All right. And so I'm like, all right, well, what are we going to do? And actually, there's a woman who's been hanging out with me for the past 15 years. She's awesome. And she was like, and she kind of lets me know her thoughts when she's like, hey, Kyle, like we got to do something because we have this infrastructure and we have no dough to feed it. So long story short, I went out and I started calling on banks and saying, like, Mr. Banker, I know that like you have a bunch of clients that can't pay their notes. How about if we manage their property, try to get it to perform well enough so that they can pay their mortgage? And so
That's a good lead
that
generation right
was
there.
lead generation, right? So we're knocking on doors of banks. And that kind of got us through a couple of years of really like scary times. And then from there, we were able to start buying things again. And then I felt like after all this time, I never wanted to go out and third party manage because I didn't think I was honestly, I didn't think I was bright enough, right? I didn't have the confidence to manage for somebody else. And it
And
was after
how many
oh,
properties at that point are you managing?
yeah, like 720 plus years or something. But I just didn't have the self-confidence. I just didn't,
Yeah.
right? So by that time, so this is again like whatever, 15 years ago. Yeah, or maybe like 12, 13 years ago, it was finally like, okay, I know how to manage train wrecks. I've been through a banking cycle. I've been through a real estate recession. Like I feel confident that we can provide help and guidance to others. So it was at that point that we really started to work on third party management, and then we felt good working with lenders in different capacities. But all of this was rental. If you kind of hear my whole theme is I focused on rental stuff. And so now our firm manages over 4,000 units in Virginia. We have a small office in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we're in Virginia, we're in Arlington, we're in Virginia Beach, Hampton, and we do single families, apartment buildings, communities, small apartment buildings. And I absolutely love it. We work for a lot of clients. We manage a lot of our own book. And I think that again, real estate is the absolute best business to accrue and accumulate wealth for every American. I really do. So, so that's kind of my story.
That's a wild story. And man, you had that grow. And if you didn't tell me that you weren't confident in your early years, I would have never guessed it with how you grew what you grew.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm still panicky. I still need like someone to say, hey man, it's okay.
You and I
yeah, I mean,
get
you're
along just
talking to
fine.
you're on the show today with the guy who couldn't fall asleep until 3 because I was laying in bed and I just could not turn my brain off because I'm like, all right, so tomorrow I have this and I need all this stuff, and then Monday we're here, and then Tuesday we're here,
Yeah.
we're Wednesday we're over here, we should be finishing that Thursday. So I'm like into next week, and I'm like, you have to turn your brain off and just go to bed.
All right. So I'm going to tell you,
Monday's going to be Monday regardless.
so I'm going to tell you, like, I mean, and I hope this isn't weird or creepy, and I'm not trying to outdo you. So when I
No.
first got going in the business, I was so obsessed with it that I could read. I would like read. It was like Robert Allen, No Money Down. Like I could read like real estate investing books. I'm not lying to you. All night long, I would come home, start reading the books, and literally it would be light out the next day and I would go back to work. And I did that a couple times. And I'm like, dude, you got some
Yeah.
hangups, man. You got some hangups.
Yeah.
So I get about not turning the brain off.
Yeah. It's real and it's a struggle. It's
Yeah.
now 9:30 where we're at, and I'm still feeling the 5 hours of sleep
Well, yeah.
that I got. But hopefully that goes away
There you go.
midday.
We'll just
but I
get you
do
some
think,
espresso.
yeah, I've got my my energy drink right here that I'm trying to drink slowly. Um, that whole anxious feeling and nervousness, like that, there has to be something, because there's always a positive and a negative to whatever you're getting as a person. So I think that little bit of anxiousness you had or nervousness in that 2009 2008 crash is what led you to like, okay, I've got to get new leads in, I got to try something different. Whereas other people who may not be as nervous, okay, we have enough cash flow to make it through this little part, let's just keep the ship afloat, and then once we get to the other side, we'll see what damages and we'll try to recoup. Where you went more on the offense and we're like, no, we're not going to sit back, we're going to try and push, and you actually push through. Where, I mean, everybody that I read or listen to, they talk about when the market is scared, that's when you buy, that's when you push, because it's going to benefit you on the other side. And I don't even know if you knew that you were doing that at the time, but it turns out that's kind of what happened. You pushed during that down period and then you gained so much out of it.
Yeah. So, it's funny because we talk about it even now in this kind of tumultuous time. I say, Warren Buffett, his quote, right? Be fearful when everyone is greedy. Be greedy
Yep.
when everyone is fearful. So,
Yes.
so I definitely. You went on mute, Marcus.
The benefit of working on the job site. They had a question of where a tool was, so I would go and mute here for a second. Sorry about that.
All good.
But that is where I first heard it, was Warren Buffett. And then I think other people took it from him and they made their little edits on the same main theme. But yeah, it's hard because you don't know if you're doing it correctly. Like you want to push and you're like, okay, well the gurus tell me to push, but am I pushing in the right places? Is this gonna pan out? And for people that are anxious, that's a real thought that keeps you up till 3 a.m.
That's right. I would say, I mean, the other part that I really try to look at and why I like the rental business is I'm always kind of like, all right, what's the downside? So when you're doing development or flips, I mean, the dollars are just so big in and out. You have no revenue coming in. The worst case scenario for me was just a lot, and still for me is just a lot bigger when you're doing development. The rental thing, man, it's just it's nickel and dime. I'm paying down a note, trying to make a few shekels up top, and so but it's not sexy. It's not sexy. And from a real estate standpoint, I define it as the armpit of the business. Everything
The
else
Gary,
is,
Indiana.
bro, it is the armpit of the business. It's all good. It's all good. I like the armpit of the
This
business.
is like a half geography show because we've got the center of the universe is New Jersey. We got Gary,
Right.
Indiana. It's the
So,
armpit.
there we go.
But we got to move more west. I'm going to leave that for Natasha. She's the West Coast person. So you got to create your analogy for that Portland area up there.
The best place.
Yeah.
No, we can't do that. That's too far. That's Oconomowoc. That's the Goodlands.
Go.
So Kyle, I was going to ask you, and I wanted to go back to this. You seem like and you've kind of alluded to you being a very cautious person when you start something. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say that I am cautious. Yes, I would say
Which is
in the real estate world. You know, some people say, oh, you know, you're a risk taker, but I mean, in the real estate world, I'm a pretty cautious person.
which is great because this next question I think is going to be very impactful for the viewers, because what we want to do here with the show is inspire those people that are on the fringe that are like, okay, I've heard all these things about real estate investing. I heard it's going to be successful. I heard it could be for anybody. I'm everybody but me. Like, I don't have money and I don't have time. What I heard from your story is you're working a full-time job. You didn't use your own money to start. You put it on a credit card. So you overcame the two biggest and first two obstacles that anybody will bring when you talk to them about real estate investing. So your personal experience, what would you tell somebody that came to you today that was like, hey, I'm thinking about real estate. I work a full-time job and I have absolutely no money and I am so terrified to fail at this. Could you give them any, it doesn't have to be words of encouragement, but something to get them over that hump of just their mental fear, even if they don't jump into real estate, just something.
Yeah. So,
and I know it's a tough question.
Yeah. So I would say, that's a great question. So number
and we
one,
do edit the show. So if you want to think
absolutely,
about it,
no.
can.
So number one, you know, I love what I do. And I will tell everyone, and I love it. I don't love it if I work a lot. So let's just pretend I only work 20 days out of the month. So
we know that's not true.
We know that's not true. Yeah. So, but if that were the case, I love it like 17 days out of the 20, right? There are 3 days that I'm going to be like, oh, this just sucks, right? I get bad news or whatever. So I absolutely love it, right? So, I would say this, you have to figure out whether or not you're going to love something. Okay. So that would be my first thing. And then so you have to try it out, right? So you have to commit it. So you have to block out time. You have to, you have to figure that out, and you got to get support from, I mean, if you're in a relationship, you got to get support out of that relationship, because, you know, if there are 68 hours in the week or 64, whatever it is, and you're working 40, 50, 60 hours with somebody else, you know, you're going to have to commit some of the time that you may be doing enjoying your leisure time. You're gonna have to commit it to finding out whether you have this love. So, and then I would just say, you know, you can always spend less money, right? You know, you don't need a new car. You don't need, you know, you just don't need a lot, right? So, so then there's this, what's that?
That
What
is
you're saying?
accurate. Yeah, no.
It is, right? So, kind of that Dave Ramsey theory on just, you know, if you go out a few nights out of the week to eat, I mean, you know, how do you cut that back?
When my husband lost his job a couple of years ago, it's crazy. I look back at what we had to live on then versus what we have to live on now, and we probably lived on a quarter to a third of what we have currently, what we bring in currently. And it's just like, wow, we did it. it wasn't fun, but we did it, and we could do it again if we had to.
Right. So I haven't even thought about this till now, is when I bought that duplex, I remember relocating into the nastiest freaking house I have ever lived in my life. And on top of that, I had no cable. I didn't have a TV. I didn't have anything. And I just, and the bathtub, I remember the bathroom not working. So I would work out at the gym, and then I would shower at the gym and do what, right. And I mean, everybody, so, and really didn't even, I just thought about it right now after whatever 30 years, because it really wasn't a big deal. But that allowed me to focus my efforts on understanding real estate more and not just watching TV or doing things. And so, and I'll say this, and this is a big step. My wife, who was at the time my girlfriend when I bought the townhomes in Fredericksburg, Virginia, my gosh, gosh, she'll probably kick my butt for saying, but like our dates were, hey honey, let's go like turn the townhome for rent. So like we would go up and I would paint and she would clean, and I was so cheap that I wouldn't even turn the electric on in the house. And we're in Richmond, Virginia in the summertime, and I mean we would just be sweating freaking bullets, right? But that was kind of that was how we got rolling, how I got, so so what I would recommend, I got a little bit off track.
No, you were right on track. I love that answer,
okay.
The explanation.
So here's the other part, right? So you do it for a year. Go out, don't dip your toe in the water. I don't say go out and buy a huge apartment building. Either buy a single family home or a duplex. Work your numbers, make sure that you can make ends meet, and do it for a year and see if you love it. See if you really like it, right? And if you do it again. If you like some parts of it, maybe you get a property manager. If you believe in the theory, if you look at your mortgage statement and you see that you now have paid down your note by a couple $1,000s for the year, and you have an extra $1,000 in your pocket, and on your tax return you get to write off some of the depreciation, so your tax situation, it looks a little better, and then you get to put a few more shekels in your pocket, and you're okay with the tenant calling you saying the rent may be late this month, or hey, the house has ants, and you're like, you're kidding me, right? Like you can figure out ants, like like if you're okay with, huh?
That's what my tenant said to me a couple months ago, and I was like, "There, like, go get an ant trap. I don't know what to tell you."
Right. So you got to get through, but it's emotional, and we talk about, and this is money, and I everybody in my office knows, because we talk about it. Money is personal and emotional. It's always personal and emotional. Yep. So you got to see what that, and I say, do it for a year. See if you love it. And if you love it, keep doing it. So that is my long response to that question, because I want people to at least try it and see if they love it.
Yeah. There were so many similarities to your starting and mine. I've become a person that doesn't turn lights on. Like at night, I'll turn maybe one light on in the house, and that's as much light as I need. One, just because when I started, I was very conscious of when I used the lights, and when I didn't. I went to the gym, I worked out, I showered there, because my gym membership per month in my water bill, like I'd rather just go there and use the shower over there. Your grocery shopping, you get smarter with. You don't buy the extras, you buy what you need. It's not a glamorous life. Many trips to Goodwill to get all my work clothes, because I don't want to damage my good ones. So many, I didn't have a TV. I still don't have a TV plan. I do have a TV now, but all I had was this little projector I found at a rummage sale that I hooked up and projected onto my wall whenever we wanted to watch Netflix. and I got one of those little Amazon Prime sticks when I signed up for Amazon Prime, and that's what I used. Yeah, people would not describe me as glamorous when I started. They probably still wouldn't call me glamorous.
So yep.
But those little things you did to save money here and there and put it back into the business, those dates you did to put it back into the business is why you're here now. But it's that little bit of sacrifice. But going back to what you started with, the sacrifices that I made didn't seem big because I loved the real estate more. So some call it sacrifice. I just called it living to get to where I want to go.
Right.
It wasn't like this big obstacle I had to learn how to live this way.
Yep.
It just kind of was natural. As much as showering at home would have been way more convenient.
That's right.
I will admit that. So I really appreciate that answer to that one, because I know a lot of people jumping in are fearful. In the whole test philosophy, try it out for a year. I in essence did that when I started. I went and looked at a duplex. The person who showed me the duplex was a little broker here in Oconomowoc, and I jumped on and worked for him for free for the first 6, 7, 8 months of just like, I was in outside sales, so I'd have a gap in my day here and there. I'd stop in the office, do some paperwork, talk to him. And then I eventually got my real estate license when I was like, yeah, this is something that I want to do. And then it started to become, okay, now this is a mainstay in my life. But I still didn't get rid of that W-2. I was scared of failure. I was scared of taking everything as I have a little kid at home and saying like, all right, I'm getting rid of my consistent paycheck, my benefits, and I'm just jumping in because I like it.
Right.
I had to hold on. And it was March 6th of 2019, when I came to the realization that I'm doing 2 things that I love, but I'm not doing them well because I'm spending 50% of my time here and 50% of my time here, and I had to cut one. But I cut the one because I knew where I was going was there, and it was real, it was secure enough, but it wasn't like I hated the other job. I loved that job. That was my favorite job. I would still go back if this failed and they took me back. Like I love the people, I love the culture, I love my clients. It was just, I had to make the decision. So, but that's, everybody's different. Everybody's timing is different. Everybody's comfortability is different when they make that decision. So I wish I could have waited as long as you did. That would have been, that would have been great.
That remember though, that the reason I waited so long also was based out of fear. So don't wish that.
There needs to be, it's a teeter-totter. You need to have that comfort. You need to have that fear.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you can play with those, because I think once you lose fear, you're going to lose your caution, and you're going to start getting a little bit too wild and too crazy. And that could just be a personal, I have no studies to back that up. It's purely anecdotal of what I believe. But just like anxiety, in the psychology background in school, I studied psychology. I wanted to get into sports psychology. So I studied like performance anxiety. And what I've found is like anxiety is on a bell curve. So too much anxiety and you cripple yourself. Not enough anxiety and you don't get even up to where your peak performance is. So as we go through and as we challenge ourselves, as we have those successes, as we have those failures, we're constantly moving on that anxiety bell curve to find out where our like middle comfort zone is, where we can get elevated to our peak performance, whether that's physical training, whether that's athletics, whether that's work, whether that's in your relationship. You always have like those little bell curves of where is that anxiety in a manageable spot, but it's still there.
Right.
Because if you don't have enough anxiety in your relationship, you're not going to do those little extras for your partner. You're not going to come home and see like, okay, they're having a stressful day, I'm going to take something off their plate. Because you're going to be like, it's carefree. We're good.
Yeah.
What?
I need to give Jason more anxiety. Damn it.
have him listen to the show and he'll get some anxiety. But you come home and you feel that, and that's the thing that kind of pushes you up to like, all right, I gotta be there for this person. And it's same thing in real estate. If you're not aware of the pitfalls and the things that could go wrong, and everything's good and we're golden, you don't get up to that peak performance where you're pushing and mentally in that good spot. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. It was kind of a rabbit hole.
No, I get it. I hear you.
That's how I think of anxiety, at least. But
I like it.
Again, purely anecdotal. So you're not in Virginia anymore, correct?
No. I'm not in New Jersey anymore. I'm in Virginia.
New Jersey. You're in Virginia.
Yep.
With Virginia, obviously right now things are, I'll say, chaotic. From the COVID 3%, where we now as a nation felt like 3% was normal, and we're up towards 6 here, where I still think like, yes, it's high, but it's not outrageous at this point.
You're talking about like the infection rates and stuff.
Yeah, the inflation and where the market's going. So where are you seeing in terms of your business? Like, what are you seeing in Virginia or in the places you're investing in? What do you see now, and where do you see this going towards the end of the year? Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but
right. So it's
from
funny
where you're at.
It's funny. I know this isn't is actually so I do have a crystal ball.
You do have the crystal ball. I want that thing. You need to pull that out in meetings where they're like, so what can we expect? Pull out the crystal ball and just like start humming like you're getting the answer.
So here's what I think, and I'm not, a year ago, so I do a newsletter, and a year ago I was like, look, we get this wage inflation, and so I'm a really that wage inflation, if you're paying somebody a bunch of dough, or the wages are up, let's say 20%, right? The wages aren't going to go back down. Okay, that's I don't see that. So I think we still have a lot of pressure on wages that allows people to pay more rent, right? That's just, it does. And so I think that rents will continue to rise until wages start to level off, and we find out what that number is. Now I think what I look at also are so we still have job growth in the economy. So every month you hear, hey, we've created another 250,000 jobs, or until that number goes down, because we have still many more jobs than people, until that reverses direction, there should be no reason to think that wages will go down. And so with all of that being said, I just think we're going to have these inflationary pressures for at least another year. And then at that point, I mean, things should level out. That is my opinion. Things always take longer than we anticipate. Things don't happen overnight. That's really what I believe. So we're still bullish on the rental market. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go out and buy a bunch of rentals right now, because it's still hard to find great deals. But at some point, things are going to level out. So I just think the markets are going to be strong for rents. The other part is that because COVID is coming to an end in Virginia, and by that I mean the court systems are now functioning the way that they were pre-COVID. It allows more stability, I think, in the markets. So for Virginia, I mean, I'm really big on the rental market. The other part is that supply, we still are hamstrung by supply issues. So until all of this kind of straightens out over the next year to 2 years, I think we're going to be, I think the rental market's going to be pretty good. And that's what I'm focused on, is the rental market, not necessarily development.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're not on the hunt to buy. during this, we'll call it a correction. So
Right.
during this little stint, you're not, it sounds like you're not out there buying. What are you doing in the interim for your business in terms of either, are you maintaining? Is this a good time for you to go in and renovate some vacants for those
Yeah.
price increases? Like, where do you guys kind of take this middle period of
Right.
unsure?
So two things. I define myself either as a bottom feeder or opportunistic. And so there's just less bottom feeding and less opportunity for us to buy right now. And I'm at a
Yeah.
different point in my life. So I always want to just make sure that the returns are at certain levels for me. So one of the things that we're looking at, because we do have strong rents coming in, I have on my whiteboard, it's called the 2022 focus. And, we are really trying to take advantage of, there are two things that are going on that will end at the end of this year. Bonus depreciation slash section 179. So these are ways that investors that have a little bit of cash can take opportunities. They can expense, again, not to get too into the weeds, you can expense certain things that you're going to have to amortize or depreciate, however you want to look, starting in January. So a great example to let me, I call it, because I'm not super what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to get super deep, so I call it Peppa Pigging it. So I'm going to Peppa Pig it down a little bit. So if I get a if I buy an appliance this year, right, I can expense it. So so if the appliance is $1,000, I can take $1,000 expense or deduction on my tax return. Next year, if I buy that same flipping appliance, I take a $200 deduction for 5 years. So we're taking advantage of, like you said, really, I'm just giving you the long response, renovations, improving the properties where we can take advantage of some of the tax opportunities that are going to happen in the final 6 months of this year that go away next year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a super cool point, because before I got into real estate, I didn't fully believe it, but I didn't know what to believe on the whole. Well, the rich are going to use the tax loopholes, and they've got the attorneys and all this stuff to take advantage of all the loopholes. And as I got into this and as I grew up, I was like, I don't really think they're loopholes, because anybody can start a business and take advantage of these. They're just the ones that do it. Right. And they're not jerks for doing it. They're not breaking the rules. So like, that's a very good example of, you're not like this highly publicized real estate guru who's looked down upon for taking those loopholes. You're using the tax laws for your advantage and using them to move your business in the right direction. So kudos for you to have the education on it and to implement it. So that's big.
And I think here's the deal, right? I'm hoping that the code was designed to create a certain behavior, and so I'm spending that money now, right? And so I've been incentivized to spend money now versus next year. I don't think it's if they wanted me to not spend the money now, then don't provide the opportunity, so anyway. Yeah. Yep.
And it is a big opportunity, because you're talking on the low scale of, you buy a stove for $1,000, and this year you can either deduct the 1,000 as opposed to the 2,000, which is regular. But now we talk about, on the whole scope of what you're doing, you're managing 700 units. So even if half of those units get a new stove, that is a huge difference in the final end books of what you'd write off as opposed to what you depreciate in any of the year. So like, that is for the listeners who are not in this, that is a huge, huge difference.
Absolutely. But even if it's a single family home, I mean, the benefit
Yeah.
to so if you just have one house and you have the ability to buy that stove this year, that, and you made, I'm really keeping it simple, that created a $1,000, that expense. It's hard to, actually, I can't make it that complicated. That expense plus kind of the depreciation creates this $1,000 loss for you, right? That loss gets offset against some of the income off of your W-2 coming in. So you really get this really nice net benefit for spending some money and really investing in the property. I mean, that's what the government's saying is, hey, listen, we want to incentivize you for investing in the property. Yeah, that's what the government's saying. So I'm good with
it's
that.
great for you because you're like, I'm going to invest in my property anyways, but thanks for the extra bonus.
That's right.
And where did you come across this information? Like that kind of tax savvy stuff.
Yeah. So if you just Google, so again, I'm weird, right? So I read a lot. So I think, but if you pull up, I mean, Google bonus depreciation or section 179, you can read about it. It's not, that's all you got to do.
You up, and I will tell the listeners, I did not set that question up, but you answered it perfectly, because the information you want to find is on the internet for free. You don't need a high-powered tax attorney. No. You don't need a business coach. You don't need any of that. Maybe the most you'd spend is like a tax book that was literally just written because this is a new thing. But like, other than that, like the information's on the internet for free. Go to Google, look up what you're looking, like what you want, and you're going to find information.
Right.
So again, free, it just takes, you have to spend your time to go look for it.
And you got to love it. Right. So
yes, that's the main thing. You love it. And what is that old saying? Like, love what you do and you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Not true, because I still consider it work, but I do love it. So that quote was so close, but
so cool.
You still have those, like you said, those 3 days where you're like, this is definitely work.
Right.
The other 7 days, not work. This is fun, but those 3 days are work.
Yep.
And that was yesterday for me, which is the no sleep, anxiety ridden, laying in bed type night. But man, it was so cool. We're coming up to an hour, and I don't want to keep you any longer, so you can get going with your Friday.
Well, thank you so much.
We try to keep them to an hour.
Yep.
But man, a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for your intel and sharing your story with how you got started, because so impactful for some of the new listeners. And I know that I talk to people that want to get into real estate, and I don't want to talk anymore, because I'm just going to put your podcast on and say, listen to him. Like, he's got all the fears you're having right now, and he did it, and it all worked out.
Well, hopefully, again, my goal, especially, and it's not like I'm 90 million years old, but my goal just kind of in this next part of my life is really to help others and make a positive difference in their lives. So if this conversation, impacts a few people, we've done our job.
Exactly. And if people want to get a hold of you, how and what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yep. So the easiest way, so my company is KRSHoldings.com, and my name is Kyle Stephenson. It's my email is kstevenson@krsholdings.com, but no one's gonna remember that. If you remember KRSHoldings.com, and you go there, you can click on me and email me, and that's
awesome.
That's an easy way. And I have someone who, I get a lot of emails, so but someone will respond as well as myself, but just someone will, we will respond.
Well,
that's awesome. And we'll put that email.
What's that?
I think we're gonna have to have you back on again. Like this.
Well, if this helped, I mean, we can talk about all different types of investment strategies, financing. I'd love to share anything that you think would be helpful to your viewers. your
Yeah,
listeners.
absolutely. I love to get into that talk with you because, I mean, with your beginning story, it was so robust that I wanted to dive into that one. But I know that you've got more wealth and knowledge to share with others. So I think coming back, I think we're booked out to 23 already. But
Well, let's do it.
Awesome.
if we can get you back in the beginning of next year, maybe that's set up some guidelines for someone's next year as they enter into real estate and how they can pick an investment.
Would love to. We talk about goal
Awesome.
planning.
That'd be great.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
All right,
That would
guys.
be awesome.
Love you
All right,
guys.
thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Keep pushing.
All righty.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Bye.